Hey YouTube, I hope you're doing good. Before the year is coming to a close, I have one final tutorial for you that shows you how to recreate an Apple animation that they have featured on their website during the holiday season. You will be able to recreate this animation only using code in Remotion. And in addition to the video version that you will see in a few moments, we also have a written version with step-by-step explanations and copy-pastable code snippets, as well as the full source code. And we have also asked beginners to follow the tutorial and have taken in some feedback to hopefully clear up any confusion and make it the most valuable Remotion tutorial for anyone who wants to learn it. So without further ado, here is a tutorial for the Apple Wow animation. Right now, if you go to apple.com, you can see the following animation. And I'm going to show you how to recreate it in Remotion, and actually this is going to be one of the easier tutorials. Create a new Remotion video using npm init video and then make a background with a linear gradient. Next, create a new React component and render a small white circle in it. I used justify content and align item center to make the dot render in the center, and then I just rendered a white div with a border radius. I have wrapped the dot in a new component called shrinking, which after 60 frames, so 2 seconds, makes the dot go from scale 1 to scale 0 over a duration of 30 frames. So it ends up disappearing. I have wrapped everything that we have so far in a new component called move. The move component has a spring animation, which by default goes from 0 to 1, and I have given it a duration of 4 seconds. We can interpolate that spring value to a range of 0 to -400 and use it as the translate y value for our children. And now that we have wrapped everything that we have so far, the dot is moving up and still disappearing after 2 seconds. Okay, this is the hardest part. This is the trail component, which takes some React children and duplicates them a certain amount of time. Using new array.fill, we can create an array with n elements, and we can map over that to duplicate the dot. Each dot has a scale applied to it, and we made it so that each dot is smaller than the previous one. Next, we wrap it in the move component that we have just created. And finally, we make it so that there is a delay between the animation start of each dot. We can do that using Remotion's sequence component. And we are replacing the move component that we had here before with the new trail component, and we are passing in a certain amount. We could also make it 8 or 2, but in the Apple example it was 4. Note that it is very important in which order transformations are applied. We are first applying the scale, after that the translation. And if we do it the other way around, then it would result in a different animation. So be mindful of that, it does make a difference. Next up is the explosion component, and the explosion component takes some children, duplicates them 10 times, and applies a rotation to each child. As you know, math.pi times 2, that is the circumference of a circle, and we divide that by how many iterations that we have, and we make that the increment of the rotation. Afterwards, we wrap everything that we had before in the explosion component, and we have this nice firework effect. I have put everything that we have so far into a component, and I've made 3 other components for red hearts, yellow hearts, and for stars. And all of them are very similar, basically just a repeat of what we have done so far. The yellow heart is just an absolute fill with a yellow emoji centered in it. And one thing that I have done as well is I've added an extra offset prop, which adds an initial Y offset to, for example, the star. So the star can start a bit earlier and goes more outwards than the rest of it. And for the stars, I've applied a bit of extra rotation. But otherwise, we already had everything, and if we put that together into one component, we get this really nice pattern. In the original Apple animation, they have a really nice slow-mo effect, and we can do it as well by wrapping everything that we have so far in another React component. So as you can tell, everything is really composable as we like it. This slow motion component calls remap speed, which is this function, which essentially is a helper function that allows us to put keyframes on the playback speed. And I've defined these keyframes that until frame 20, the playback speed is 1.5x, and afterwards it goes down to 0.5x immediately. Which, as you can tell, after frame 20, the speed becomes slower immediately. And we can use the built-in freeze component in Remotion to override the time for all of the children. And with that, we have this nice slow motion effect like in the Apple commercial. For the Animoji, you need to have an iPhone and you have to record an Animoji of yourself using iMessage and send it to a friend. After you've done that, it will also appear on the Messages app on your Mac, and you will be able to right click and download a movie of your Animoji. Then right click it, select Services, encode selected video files, then choose Apple ProRes and make sure to check Preserve Transparency. Afterwards, a new file will be created, and you can use FFmpeg to turn it into a series of frames. Those frames are numbered, and we can import them in Remotion by putting them into the public folder and then importing them using the static file API. And we can use the current frame number to figure out the file name. And then we have imported a transparent version of the Animoji into Remotion. And here we are. I have created a master composition which includes an absolute fill, and all the children are also absolutely positioned, so they overlay each other nicely. We have the background, we have each of the explosion effects which are in slow motion, and the Animoji, and if we play it, we get almost the same animation as in the Apple graphic. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and let me know if you were able to follow it.